Good afternoon and welcome. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Helen Kitching. I'm an old girl from the 1980s, and I was here at Moira House for 7 years. I was incredibly sad when I heard that Moira House was shutting down, and also incredibly angry when I heard about the circumstances. However, we're not going to talk about that today, because we're here to say farewell. When I saw that James was doing a public consultation, I came along because I wanted to see what was going to be happening to our school. But when I arrived here, I suddenly felt so sad that we hadn't actually been able to say a final farewell. If you're interested in seeing the plans for the development of the site, you'll see them on your tour of Boston House if you haven't already. And I have to say that of all the outcomes, if the school was going to be redeveloped, I am eternally grateful that James got the job, because he's keeping the 3 main buildings, he's doing it with sensitivity, in a way that all the other developers basically wanted to raise the school to the ground, and that would have just been horrendous. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I do appreciate that this may be an emotional time for many of us, and it will be upsetting to see the school in such a sorry state. But let's try and use this opportunity to fill the halls and the rooms with happy memories and times when we just had fun and catching up with each other. And as you're going round, if you want to make little videos reminiscing about what you got up to, those that you're able to share. The lovely Nick here has offered to set us up a YouTube channel so that we can share them, so that we keep an oral memory of the school. We obviously have a book, and I believe another one's being written, but I think an oral memory and just like little videos going around would be really lovely. So here we are for one final assembly. Adrian Underwood, our headmaster from 1975 to 1997, will be giving us a short talk on the history of the school, followed by a Bible reading by Hilary Dale and a reading from a 1913 edition of The Shuttle. And then finally, we will raise the rafters with our school song. If you haven't got song sheets, there are song sheets on the table over there. Without further ado, let us march onward and give our school the send-off that she deserves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Those who know me well would know I never speak from a typescript, but I am today for 2 reasons. One, I will keep it to 5 minutes that way. And 2, I don't mind people knowing that as we got off an aircraft in New Zealand 3 and a bit years ago, I had a stroke. And standing up without a chair isn't very easy. Short-term memory is terrible, but all the rest of me works, or most of it. So I'm very happy to speak today. I also don't need to rehearse much of the history, because those of you who know it will know the history published in 2000, written by 2 former pupils, Geraldine Beer and Cynthia White, gives a very, very good statement of how the school came about. It was founded in 1875 by a visionary in education, Charles Ingham, and he was succeeded as head by his daughter Gertrude, who was then succeeded in 1939 by the redoubtable, if anybody remembers her, Mona Swan. Charles Ingham's successors ensured that his principles for the education of women remain the bedrock of the education of this school. After various moves from the original site in Addiscombe in Croydon, Charles Ingham finally settled on Eastbourne as the place to keep the school forever, as it were. As the history records, the school flourished and grew through the 1890s and through the early decades of the 20th century. However, as 1975 dawned, it was a year of celebration of 100 years since the school's foundation, all was not well. I had been appointed headmaster earlier that year to start in September 1975. On that day of celebration with a lot of old girls on the site, I was joined by my then 4-year-old daughter, who's here today, and just celebrated her 50th birthday, and my 1-year-old twins, who are here today, who celebrate their 47th on Sunday. During that day, I received 2 major shocks. Pupil numbers for that September were down to 90, and a lot of lovely parents wished me well, but said, and by the way, our notice is in for our daughter to leave at Christmas. Clearly, there was a job to be done. While pupils' numbers were low, I did have 2 very strong support inheritances. One was a number of staff who were prepared to come with me on what was going to be a bumpy journey, and the other were some wonderful governors who had appointed me and said, well, having appointed you, we've got to go with you. There is something in the history that says no area of the school remained untouched. The temptation to compare Adrian Underwood to the Plantagenets is overwhelming. The name refers to broom, and the allusion to a new broom would not go unnoticed in medieval times. The history states that Adrian maintained an autocratic style, but this was a benign autocratic democracy, but there was work to be done. In 1980, the school purchased Boston House and developed it into a sixth form centre and a junior school. In the Easter of 1985, I spent a month in the Far East because I had no idea where our pupils came from and discovered the expat life they had out there. I repeated that exercise every 2 years until 1997. In the early 90s, we reached a record number of boarders approaching 200. In 1997, I was succeeded by the late and much mourned Anne Harris, who continued strengthening the school's reputation. You will note that Anne Harris is the only name in the school's recent history I will mention. How dearly would I have loved to refer by name to those wonderful supporting colleagues and governors who made the resurgence of Moira House a reality. But by doing so, I might miss out a name, and I refuse to do that. But they know they have my eternal gratitude for all they did to make this school what it was between 75 and the early part of this century. You will note I'm stopping at 2000, as by that time Anne was firmly in post. I'd become National Director of the Boarding Schools Association, and the school was flourishing under Anne's leadership. With due diplomacy, I will not go anywhere near the years to the school's closure in the summer of 2020. I will, however, pay tribute to the plans the developers have for this site. Their care and sympathetic planning of the site, which retains the 3 main houses, is much appreciated. And I talked to James today, along with Helen, and we will have a permanent memorial on site to the 140-odd years of pupils. And finally, the most important group in the school, you, its former pupils. Although times were tough, we never lost sight of what we were here for. We were here to give the best possible education to a cadre of young women who we know have carved significantly successful careers for themselves, and that includes the career of motherhood. That was our aim, and you, former pupils, have done great justice to that aim. Thank you.